I want you to imagine that there's a bridge. Okay, so we go up, bridge either side. In the middle, okay, is the space that you're about to endure on. On one side of the bridge, you've got where you are now. On the other side of the bridge, you've got where you want to go to. Okay, and between that is a gap. That's why we create goals. We don't create goals based on things we've already achieved. We create goals on things that we want to achieve. And because we haven't achieved them before, that means there's a gap between where we are now and where we want to be. And so what I want you to ask yourself is one simple question. What do I need to upgrade in my thoughts, feeling, or in my performances to bridge that gap? What are the 3 things that you need to upgrade in your mind, in the way you feel, or the way you perform that's going to help you bridge that gap? I'm going to lay out the entire 8-step system we use with Australia's best athletes on how they create their success plans for each season. It's called the Good to Great Game Plan. Every athlete feels inspired going into every year, but what separates the ones who dream and those that achieve? Instead of traditional goal setting, we're going to create a visionary snapshot of your future self, both as an athlete and as a person. This combines mental and emotional clarity with tactical skill building that will instantly elevate your approach to your game. We won't just set goals together, we will embed them into your identity, and you'll start to become the athlete you want to be by unlocking peak performance from inside out. Over the next 25 minutes, my focus is to give you a comprehensive step-by-step plan that allows you to move into the year full of confidence and clarity. So to maximize the next 25 minutes, we're going to clear a few things up so you can get the most out of this plan. The first thing that I want you to grab is a piece of paper and a pen if you have one. If you're listening to this, what you can do is you can take some mental notes and then return back to it later. Now, I'm going to be asking some questions as we go through this process. And when I ask the questions, if you're sitting down and watching this video, one of the best ways to do it is just pause the video, answer the question, and then return back to the video. Okay, so you can it's more of an immersive experience that way. Again, if you're listening to it, take some mental notes. You can even use Siri on your iPhone to take some notes potentially, and then come back to the video and build out this good to great game plan. Now, why are we building a good to great game plan? Why do we build a playbook that you can use for the year? Now, when we look at mental skills, sure, this isn't the most advanced trainings on the mind and psychology and how, emotions work and those sorts of things. But what I've come to realize is that there's only 2 parts to us as humans. There's the emotional and then there's the logic. And what happens if there's not a logic and clear plan in place and we're not prepared, the emotional can become a lot more erratic. And so what we want to do by having this good to greatness plan is we want to minimize how much the emotional mind takes over by having a clear, structured, logical plan in place. And that's the good to great game plan. Now, the reason why we want to do this is every year, us as humans, not just athletes, but particularly athletes, you move into the new season with a lot of optimism. You move into the season with a lot of inspiration. And what we want to do is to make sure that that doesn't turn into a headless chook running around. We want to direct its energy so you get the most out of the inspiration that you do have for the upcoming season. So the good to great plan game plan is one of the 5 key systems that we use inside the elevated athlete method. So let's get underway, and we're going to start with step 1. So we've got 8 systems to go through, and the first system is reflection. Now, why do we reflect upon the year? I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into a conversation I was having with a very elite athlete in Australian sport the other day. We did a session together and we were talking about the approach to the new year being one of using where we were exposed in the previous year as the key foundations for elevation or for growth for the upcoming season. And so what reflecting does, it allows us to collect and gain principles from the previous year, and so we don't make those same mistakes the following season. And so a key part of creating a new game plan for your new season is just as much about reflecting and taking the good and the bad from the previous season, so we can take momentum from last season into the next season, rather than sort of rubbing it out and moving on, and then we don't really learn from these lessons. So the first question is, what mentally challenged you the most in 2024 or your previous season? What mentally challenged you the most in the last season? Again, if you're watching this live on YouTube, just pause me, answer the question, come back. Number 2, where were you exposed in your performances in the last season? Where were you exposed in your performances? Think tactically, think like very specific. Where were you exposed in your performances in the previous season? Number 3, where were you exposed mentally in the previous season? Where were you exposed mentally in the previous season? Was it your inability to overcome errors? Was it frustration? Was it getting dropped and you didn't recover from it? Get clear. Have a moment to think about it. Where were you exposed mentally in the previous season? And then the last question for our reflection piece is, what good happened in the previous season? What good happened in the previous season? Look at the human side of you. What good happened in your life? And then look at the performer side of you as well. What good happened in your sport? Now, what we do when we create this is, like I said, we turn them into practical principles. So as you move into the next season, you've got like the cookie jar mentality. Then David Goggins talked about the cookie jar mentality. You put cookies into the cookie jar, or you put experiences into the cookie jar, and then you can pull pull out those experiences in the future when you encounter those hiccups or scenarios again, and you can deal with them a lot better based on your past experience. Number 2, we're going to create some clear goals. Now, I'm an advocate for goals. I'm also not a massive advocate for goals, and I'll explain why. The first thing is, the goal or the outcome is only a byproduct of the steps that we take in order to get there. And so I feel like a lot of people attach to the goal without focusing on the practical steps to get there. And this is what the Good to Great game plan does. It pulls it back to the week. And we're going to talk about how to set up a weekly plan in just a moment. So step number 2, we're going to create some clear goals. So what you're going to do is you're going to create 3 clear goals that you want to achieve. And the first thing when we create a goal is we want to make it meaningful. So it needs to mean something to you. But number 2, it needs to be measurable. I want to be happier is not a goal. I want to perform better is not a goal. Okay, what we want to do is we want to make it easier for the mind to focus and give it a numeration. We want to give it a number. We want to give it something that we can look at a clear yes or a clear no, we didn't achieve it. For example, I want to get a $200,000 a year contract upgrade over a 3-year contract. That could be a goal. I want to make a certain rep team. That could be a goal. You either do make the rep team or you don't. So what you want to do is you want to make it clear, meaningful to you, but you want to make it measurable. Give it a number. Give it something that you can point towards that you achieved it or you didn't achieve it. Now, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself the question. I want you to imagine that there's a bridge. Okay, so we go up, bridge either side. In the middle, okay, is the space that you're about to endure on. And what I mean by that is, on one side of the bridge, you've got where you are now. On the other side of the bridge, you've got where you want to go to, okay? And between that is a gap. That's why we create goals. We don't create goals based on things we've already achieved. We create goals on things that we want to achieve. And because we haven't achieved them before, that means there's a gap between where we are now and where we want to be. And so what I want you to ask yourself is one simple question. What do I need to upgrade in my thoughts, feeling, or in my performances to bridge that gap? What are the 3 things that you need to upgrade in your mind, in the way you feel, or the way you perform that's going to help you bridge that gap? And the last thing I want you to write down so you can start to build some momentum with your goals is what needs to happen in the next 30 days to help progress each of these goals. So you've got the goal, it's meaningful and measurable. You've clearly outlined the gap between where you are now and where you want to be and how you're going to achieve what you want to achieve. And then the third thing is you've got an action that you can take over the next 30 days that's going to help you progress that goal. All right, step number 3, the human habit hero, the 3 H's. All sustainable success comes from having a human-first approach. The best athletes in the world are the ones that have the best family relationships, are the ones that have, joyful experiences outside of their sport. They play golf, they do things, they have hobbies that they love to do. And so all sustainable success for the hero, the performer within you, comes from the happiness and the joy of the human. And so what we want to do is we want to take a moment to work on these 3 H's, the human, the habits, and the hero. So when we look at the human, I want you to ask yourself 2 key questions. The first one being, what do you love doing most as a human? What do you love doing most as a human? Number 2, I want you to ask yourself, what brings you the most joy in life, in the smallest of moments? So the difference between these questions is, what do you love doing? Do you like going to cafes, playing golf, seeing friends? And then what brings you most joy in life? It's like, I love seeing my friends smile. I love having the feeling I have after that conversation with my parents. Or I love, the more feelings. So the first one is like, what do you love to do? Action. Okay. What do you love doing most as a human? The next one is what brings you the most joy, the feelings inside. Okay. So just a little bit of a contrast there. So that's the human. Now you've got a clear understanding of the things that help you operate as a human the best. Now we're going to move into number 2, which is habits. The way that I see habits and view habits is about making everything else easier. As an athlete, I'm sure you can agree there is about 1,000 mental tabs going on. You've got your wellness check-ins, you've got your video there, your upcoming opponent, you got this, that, training, and you're trying to improve all at the same time whilst you've also got personal things to attend to. There's a lot of mental tabs. The way I view habits is by setting up 3 clear habits. Such by executing these 3 habits, everything else in your life happens or becomes far easier. So what we want to do is when we look at our habits, we want to make sure that the habit almost ticks off multiple other things. So I'm sure you can agree that you are inspired. You want to achieve great things. I don't need to inspire you. That's not my job. My job is to help you be decluttered in the mind so you can execute under the bright lights. Now, when we look at the habits, if you plan your week is one of your habits, okay, you map out the week and the weekly plan I'm about to show you. If you map out your week each and every week, you've clearly got a game plan for every day, what the 3 key things you got to do and how you're going to fill your cup up as a human. Okay, I'm going to show you the template a little bit later on and break it down for you. So if you plan your week, you can go to sleep comfortably knowing that you have a clear structured plan for each day and what you need to achieve. And that is drastically going to decrease the amount of mental tabs you have open because you've got a clear and structured plan in place. Number 2, if we look at the habits that some of the best athletes in the world do, one of them is they love to spend some time in the morning mindfully connecting with their breath and then setting their focuses for the day. I call it the miracle morning. They do 5 minutes of meditation or visualization, and then they create 2 clear outcomes on how they're going to achieve that day. So I'm just giving you some examples of some habits that some of the best athletes globally use, but you can create your own. So how you want to think about that is what are 3 key habits that you can do such by achieving those habits, everything else in your day and your week becomes easier. Now, let's talk about the hero, the performer. the third H. And I want you to ask a simple question and answer it authentically, answer it with ownership and responsibility. It is, where does growth come in the next season? Where does growth come from the next season? Where do you need to expand? Where do you need to become better? Get detailed. Certain area in your game, list it out. Where does growth come in the next season? Now, if we look at this moves into step number 4, okay, after the hero, which is the 4 growth areas. We have this page in the booklet that we give the athletes that I work with, and it's called the 4 growth buckets. And at the top, it has 4 boxes, and at the top of each box, it has a little blue strip, and that little blue strip is the theme or the area that they want to develop. And then in the box below it, they list the actions or the drills specifically at training that they need to work on or develop in order to improve one of the main 4 areas. So let's say, for example, I'm going to use a soccer player, for example. Let's say that they want to create more space, okay, when they're attacking. They want to create more space between them and the defender. And so if that's the blue area, it's like getting more time on the ball, and what we need to work on is a couple of things: is strength, so we can get them off us, speed off the mark, and certain areas. So what you want to do is list in the blue what you want to improve, and then in the 2 steps or 3 steps below it, list out the drills and the things that you need to do in order to improve that. Now you do that for all 4 buckets, and now you've got 4 clear areas and 4 clear structured game plans for those skills to develop and build upon. And that's going to turn you into the athlete that you want to be 12 months from now. Imagine overcoming mistakes in under 15 seconds and staying locked into the game under the highest pressures. As an athlete on the rise, the pressure to perform at the highest level is relentless. And without a reliable system to regulate your emotions and focus, it's easy to get stuck in a cycle of frustration. That's where the 15-second reset ritual comes in. It's a tailored 3-step process designed to help you recover from mistakes in seconds, allowing you to regain your focus and confidence mid-game. Inside this free 25-minute training, I'm going to help you design a tailored 3-step process that works specifically for you. For free instant access, click the link in the show notes below. Step number 5, we're going to talk about the personal blueprint. What I've learned over the last couple of years is how a cluttered mind moving into performances can hold an athlete back. And now having a less is more approach moving into your performances each and every week or whenever you perform matters a lot. You see, when you go under the bright lights, when you perform on the biggest stages, it's completely different to training. You can't be expected to withhold the same amount of information during a performance as you do at training. There's not as much external chaos. There's not external pressure. There's not 2 points on the line. There's not contracts on the line. All these things aren't on the line nearly as much, if not at all, at training, which means there's so many external factors that change when we move into a performance, and this can impact the minds. Patrick Mahomes had a mental skills mentor that taught to him about we can only focus on 6 things at once. Now, I'd like to take it one step further and focus only on 2 things at once. But the essence of what Patrick does there is realizing that if we're thinking about too much, if we're cluttering the mind too much, we're going to become really stagnated. Our ability to adapt and respond to the performance as it's happening is going to become harder. And our ability to be present in the performance becomes challenged. So what we want to do is when you map out your personal blueprint, you want to have, depending on the sport that you're in, but let's use rugby league as an example, you want to have one simple attacking action and one simple defensive action or mental cue that you constantly think about. And by doing that, you're going to stay in the performance, you're going to keep the mind focused. And what you do, as I was talking to some of our athletes last night on our group call, you're going to keep the mind on a lead. And what I mean by that, like when you take the dog for the walk, you have the dog on a lead. And what we do is the mind can become really erratic in a performance. You've may notice our ability to overcome errors, frustration, so many external factors that are happening that it's so easy for the mind to go walkabout. Okay, and we go into our shell and then we just have okay performances. What the personal blueprint does, it keeps the mind so focused, so narrow, such by focusing on the one attack thing, one defensive thing, you stay present in the performance, you stay in the moment, and you're able to execute those key moments better. So that's the performance blueprint. Set number 6, we want to talk about your alter ego. Now, really, we only have two paths we take actions from. We take action from the lower self, the suboptimal self, or we take action from the higher self that you know that you can be. Let's use a couple of athletes as an example that use and created an alter ego. You may have watched the recent running back series on Netflix where Justin Jefferson talked about his alter ego. Another athlete, the great and late Kobe Bryant, had Mamba. These athletes created these alter ego versions of themselves to take their performance to a new level and find an unfair advantage. Now, on one side, we've got the lower self. Now, it's really important that we take this time to list out the performance traits, the habits, the bad habits, the behaviors, and the characteristics and the actions that your lower self takes. And the reason why we do that is then that sharpens the alter ego, the best self that we want to step into. But I'm not going to sit here and deny the fact that we're going to face errors. We're going to face moments where we don't feel optimal. And so we want to give our lower self a name, and we want to list the traits, the bad habits, and the behaviors that our lower self takes. And by clearly outlining that, we then do the opposite for our alter ego. So you want to give your alter ego a name, and then you also want to list the type of actions this alter ego takes in the performance, how they think, how they feel, the habits of this alter ego. And now what we've done is we've created this brilliant contrast between our lower self, our suboptimal self, the fearful self, and our powerful self, our alter ego self. And by doing that and naming them both, we have a quick instant cue that we can trigger during a performance. So that's the alter ego step number 6. We've got 2 more steps to go. Now, this is where we start to pile all of this into a clear plan so you can take action today. It's as simple as that. That's what we want to do. We don't want to just have this stored in the head with all these visions and dreams. We want to turn it into action because we know it's only in the doing that we become better as athletes. So step number 6 is we want to turn this into a 6-week game plan. And I'm going to give you a simple formula that you can use. You're going to clearly outline 3 key things you want to focus on over the next 6 weeks. You want to list out those 3 key things, how you're going to improve them. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a little box and you're going to write down what you want to focus on over the next 6 weeks. And then underneath that, you want to write 2 key actions or points or things you need to do in order to improve that thing. So for example, let's say you want to improve your kicking game. So, improve kicking game by this or improve this type of kicking game. And then below that, list the 2 key things that you need to do. I need to have a meeting and create a plan with my coach. And the second thing is I need to maybe map out when I'm going to do my kicking extras on my Sunday plan. When I plan out my week, I need to embed it into what day they're going to. That could be the actions that you take. So what you want to do is you want to make it easy for yourself to win. Okay, and list out what you want to improve for 3 key areas. And then under each of those areas, list 2 actions that you can take to drastically improve that over the next 6 weeks. Now, what else are you going to do? You're going to create 6-week goals. Now, this is where you can become a little bit more visionary based. So, for example, it's like, I want to score 3 goals over the next 6 weeks if you're soccer. Or if you're a boxer, I want to win my next fight. I want to land a new contract in the next 6 weeks. So the 3 points we were talking about before, they're more so skill areas. This is more so goals. Create a little bit of a vision. What would you love to have achieved in 6 weeks from now? Then the other section that we finish with for the 6-week game plan is what are the human needs? What are you going to do for yourself as the human away from the performer over the next 6 weeks? That's going to water that plan as well. That's going to bring you joy and bring you satisfaction in your life. Now, back at the 3 H's, we talked about what brings the human joy and happiness in your life. And so what you can do is maybe grab a couple of those examples and put them into a 6-week game plan of what you're going to do for yourself over the next 6 weeks. Last one is our weekly plan. So now what we do is we have a little bit of a weekly structure. We go reflect. In the middle, we create a plan for across the board, and then we set our outcomes for the week. And this just filters down from the 6-week plan. So now we go from a 6-week plan, and then we turn that 6-week plan into a weekly executor that you can clearly wake up tomorrow and know exactly what you need to do to progress as an athlete. So what we want to do at the start of each week, we want to reflect. What were 3 wins from last week? We want to acknowledge small wins that we're having in our career to keep that momentum happening. So list out 3 wins from last week. The next thing is you want to gain 3 lessons from last week. So what are 3 things that you learned about yourself, your teammates, your sport, your career, finance, relationships, whatever it might be? But what are 3 things you learned from last week? So that's reflecting from last week. Now we're going to move in just to set up a bit of a snapshot. So we've got 3 key areas here. The first one is just write down what are my 6-week goal updates. Okay, you might be attending to this, maybe you set your 6-week goal or plan 3 weeks ago. Okay, you've done 3 weekly plans now. And so each week you do your weekly plan. You just want to write down a couple of sentences on giving yourself a bit of an update on how you're going and progressing with the 6-week plan. Then in the middle, you're just going to list out what are some of the commitments you have outside of your sport this week. Do you have bills that are due? Do you have sponsorships, endorsement stuff coming up? Do you have any meetings, some family commitments? So what you want to do is now just list out those outside sport commitments. And then lastly for this section, I just want you to write down 2 key things that you're going to do this week that is going to fill up your personal cup. Okay, so we've got 6-week goal update in the middle. Write down any commitments you have outside of your sport this week. And then in the third box, just write down 2 things that you're going to do this week to fill up your personal cup. Now, how I like to structure it is if you use a calendar, you've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What you can do is in those outside sport commitments or in how you're going to fill up your cup, grab them now as well and just go and plug them into the day. So let's say you've got like Monday down to Sunday, go grab the outside sport commitments and slot them into their appropriate days. So now you're starting to puzzle together how each day is going to look for your upcoming week. Okay, so you've got a clear plan and every day you wake up, you're structured and you know exactly how you're going to win. Now, lastly, we want to look at what are the development areas or what are the skill areas we're going to focus on this week. So this is where you got to kind of coach yourself, but we can use the game plans that we've used in the 4 opportunity buckets as guides. So what we want to do is we want to list out 3 key focus points for our training this week so we can clearly track that we're improving as an athlete. So what you can use as a guide is go to the 4 opportunity buckets that you listed before, which was the skill areas that you're developing for the year that you set out. And you can go and look at them and see if any of them need to become a priority this week and list out what you want to improve out of those 4 skill areas in your week. Or this is where you might need to coach yourself because life and sport can change so fast. You may need to adapt and go against those 4 opportunity buckets for this week. Okay, so you might realize that something else is really important this week and I really need to focus on developing that. And so you list that down. So what you're going to do is look at your 4 skill buckets that you listed, look at what's happening right now and present in your career, and then merge them together and create 3 clear outcomes on how you're going to progress as an athlete this week. And then to finish the weekly plan, you just slot them into their days like you did with the other things we just said, like the outside sport commitments and how you're filling up your cup. And so what you should now finish with is Monday through to Sunday, what days you're focusing on what things and what days you have certain tasks on. So now what we've got is we've got a whole macro plan. We've got reflection from last year, turning them into principles. We've got goals in place. We've got a 6-week game plan. We've got how you're happy as a human, how your habits are going to shape everything that you do, like planning your week, doing mindfulness in the morning, some visualization, some maybe other habits that you have, like walking the dog. Now, we've also clearly outlined how the hero within you, the performer, is going to improve this year with your 4 skill opportunity or your opportunity buckets for this season. And this is where we create a really clear plan. This is how specific we can get. We turn your vision into a weekly, day-to-day snapshot on how you're going to improve. And this keeps the athlete in the logical side of ourselves on the path, on track, and then allows the emotional side, the mental skills stuff, to become a lot easier because we've got this structure in place. Now, team, that is how you build, and that is the 8-step blueprint to creating a really solid, good to great game plan for your upcoming season. Thank you for joining the podcast, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you took a lot out of it and you're able to sit down and have a lot more clarity and certainty that you're going to improve this year as an athlete and edge closer to being an elite athlete and edge closer to the dreams that you've had for your entire life. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.